The new Queensland Government is delivering a balanced energy plan that improves the energy assets we've got while we build what we need for the future. A sensible transition means affordable, reliable and sustainable energy for all Queenslanders. By making the right choices now, we're preventing the average Queensland household paying $1,035 a year in extra energy costs, helping to support family budgets. We're delivering a $1.6 billion electricity maintenance guarantee to improve our current energy assets, ensuring they continue to provide reliable energy. And we're providing $400 million to drive investment in renewables, like solar and hydro, and batteries to better store the energy we generate. By delivering the Energy Roadmap, the Queensland Government will deliver affordable, reliable and sustainable energy and a sensible transition for Queensland's energy future. Search Queensland Energy Roadmap to find out more.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Queensland Media Club. Today, the eyes of Australia are on Queensland again, as the Treasurer and Energy Minister David Janetzki unveils Queensland's 5-year energy roadmap. Today, you'll hear how the roadmap will ease pressure on Queensland's balance sheet, de-risk our energy future and add a significant generational capacity. Mr Janetzki is Queensland's Treasurer, Energy Minister, Minister for Home Ownership and Member for Toowoomba South. Having served on the board of Opera Queensland, been a founding director of social enterprise Vanguard Laundry, and lectured at the University of Southern Queensland, Mr Janetzki brings a diverse experience to the Queensland Parliament. The 5-year energy roadmap is the Crisafulli government's promise to ensure energy is reliable, affordable and sustainable. It will future-proof Queensland by involving both the private sector and local communities. Please join me in welcoming David Janetzki.
Good afternoon, friends. With the beautiful weather outside, I thank you for joining me here for lunch today. And I want to make a couple of acknowledgements. And I know they're acknowledged at the beginning, but I want to acknowledge my good friend and Cabinet colleague, the Minister for Housing, Sam O'Connor, who's here. Thanks, Sam. My ministerial colleague, Beck, who is here as well. Lovely to see you here, Beck. I also want to acknowledge the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Cameron's here, I know. And also Shadow Energy Minister Lance as well, and I acknowledge your presence here today. I also I understand there's a lot of mayors here today, and I welcome you all, and I'm going to refer to a couple of them, in fact, during my speech. But I want to acknowledge Sally Ann Atkinson. Lovely to see you here, Sally Ann, and lovely that you could be with us today. And also former Premier Rob Borbidge. I know Rob's here today as well. So, with everyone acknowledged, affordable, reliable and sustainable power for Queenslanders. Since forming government nearly a year ago, we have been working to deliver that commitment. And today, I am pleased to share the Crisafulli government's energy roadmap with you and the Queensland people. It is pragmatic and realistic. It's a system plan focused on the next 5 years, but with an eye on the future. It opens the door for private sector investment and a market-led approach to drive our state's energy future. It's the culmination of a large body of work, informed in fact by many of you in this room, with the common goal of an energy system that is founded on economics and engineering and not on ideology. It's grounded in the realities of consumer needs, infrastructure costs and deliverability timeframes. That means the journey will be travelled the Queensland way, using our strengths, working with what is in our control and delivering what best serves Queensland and Queenslanders. From generation assets run by CS Energy, Stanwell and CleanCo, through the transmission lines of Powerlink and the distribution network of Energy Queensland, we are in a unique position and we will unapologetically leverage it to our advantage. When I announced in April that an energy roadmap would be completed by the end of this year, I planted signposts to guide the journey. And today, I'm going to continue with the tortured metaphor as I hammer in those signposts. The roadmap provides certainty on our government's policy and investment settings, and importantly, it acknowledges the road to 2030 and beyond will be dynamic. And good energy policy is responsive to market dynamics, technological advancement and innovation. When then Premier Palaszczuk launched the former government's Energy and Jobs Plan in 2022, she talked about acting in a revolutionary way. Labor's QEJP was big on hyperbole, but small on substance and credibility. The entire plan hinged on Barumba's first energy being online by 2030 and Pioneer Burdekin's first energy being on by 2032. Neither project was properly scoped or costed, with timeframes undeliverable and costings tens of billions of dollars out. The implausibility of Pioneer Burdekin is well established, but even an independent report on Barumba, first cited by us after the change of government, estimated that there was just a 1% chance of any energy being delivered by that project by 2030. Labor's plan would have resulted in Queenslanders paying more for electricity to meet these high system costs, with vulnerable households bearing the brunt. Frankly, Queensland deserved better. What I outlined today is deliberately pragmatic and dynamic, improving the energy assets we've got while we build what we need for the future. Our system plan makes clear our government's priorities and targets no regrets investments. In this way, it delivers on our commitment of restoring respect for taxpayers' money. And a strong example of this, in practice, is that the roadmap models a number of pathways for running state-owned coal assets compared to Labor's arbitrary 2035 closure dates. Now, in April, I said that to meet the energy generation challenge of our future, we would need coal generation for longer. Without enough replacement generation and firming capacity, coal assets continue to be needed for affordable and reliable energy. That's reality. And that's not just for our state. Queensland is a consistent net exporter of electricity, and our state-owned coal assets are critical to the whole national electricity market. Today, I announce that the roadmap resets operating timeframes for state-owned coal assets to technical lives, with options to further extend into the future if needed. That will deliver $26 billion less in system costs over the next decade. The former Labor government's decision to close coal units by 2035, regardless of their condition, is officially abolished today. Ultimately, that position was unrealistic, captured by our ideology, and fundamentally dishonest. It would have resulted in additional costs of more than $1,000 for every Queensland household every year for the next 10 years. And I confirm today that further work will be undertaken for next year's budget with respect to power bills beyond this budget's commitment to index the vulnerable household rebate. We lifted that from $372 to $386 per annum for that vulnerable household rebate. That captures 600,000 vulnerable households. We will be doing further work in respect of power bills in the next budget. We've already announced in April the operating span of Callide B would be extended from 28 to at least 2031. And other indicative operating spans are included in the roadmap and align with dates advised to AEMO. State-owned coal assets will play a critical role in Queensland's energy system until at least 2046, meaning coal will be part of the state's generation mix for decades. That's good news for tens of thousands of Queensland regional jobs, for communities, for the energy system and for energy consumers. It also provides investment certainty to private sector gas and renewables investors. I can also announce today that the roadmap outlines a clear framework for future decisions on coal operating timeframes. The roadmap details a decision matrix that triangulates system need with asset integrity with financial performance. The government will continue to work with GOCs to monitor the condition of state-owned coal units. The framework will be rigorously applied to operating decisions to ensure system needs are always met in the most efficient and effective way. Supporting these decisions is our implementation of our $1.6 billion electricity maintenance guarantee. This guarantee is supporting investment into our state-owned generators to deliver affordable, reliable and sustainable power for Queenslanders. We've also ensured Queensland's government-owned generators now have key performance indicators for maintenance, personal safety, process safety and plants performance outcomes. We've seen the KPIs in action already as performance payments have not been made to CS Energy senior executives. KPIs are driving better outcomes for our energy system and all Queenslanders. The actions we take today, the Queensland way, is in sharp contrast to other states like New South Wales and Victoria. In just the last 2 years, the New South Wales Labor government was forced to make payments to keep Eraring open, and the Victorian government has spent undisclosed sums to keep 2 privately owned coal generators there. We know that our approach will improve the energy assets we have while we build what we need for the future. The next signpost to be hammered in today is marked gas. Gas has emerged as a critical technology for system reliability and firming as the generation mix changes over time. Modelling indicates Queensland may have up to 4.1 gig of gas-fired generation by 2030, with up to 8.3 gig of gas by 2035. This forecast reflects our commitment to ensuring reliability is met through additional dispatchable capacity. The need for new gas capacity is universal across all market outlooks to de-risk the energy system as it transitions over time. Our state-owned generators are progressing new gas projects. We saw in the budget $479 million being contributed to CS Energy's Kogan gas peaker near Chinchilla. Progress funding towards Stanwell's Lockyer Energy project, that 114 meg project in the Lockyer. And CleanCo's continued investigation of a new cycle gas turbine at Swanbank. These projects could deliver more than 700 meg of gas-fired generation capacity by the start of the new decade. Again, the Queensland way, we are being proactive on gas, not reactive. Only last week, the South Australian Labor government needed to strike a deal with AGL to keep the Torrens Island B gas peaker running for another 2 years. Today, I announce a new investor gateway, which I'll have more to say about shortly. And the reason, if you're wondering why we started a little bit earlier than what was on the run sheet, is my speech is going a little bit longer. So settle in, folks. Settle in. I'll have more to say about the investor gateway shortly. But I want to start by saying, in respect of gas, QIC will undertake market sounding to partner with the private sector to deliver an additional 400 meg of gas-fired electricity in central Queensland as a critical insurance for long-term security and reliability. Market sounding on that project will begin this year. This is a key strategic investment, particularly with Rio Tinto's announcement of the potential earlier closure of Gladstone Power Station. Central Queensland hosts the state's largest concentration of coal-fired generation and industrial demand, with its positioning supporting power flows both north and south, and as well as directly into Gladstone. In this regard, I also announced today that the Gladstone project involving critical network upgrades and reinforcement of the transmission network will be progressed at pace with a view to its completion by 2029. $221 million has been already progressed in the 25-26 budget, with more than $1.2 billion allocated across the forwards, with further investments to be made as required to safeguard system security to this vital artery the industrial heartland of Queensland. As AEMO observed last week, the potential earlier retirement of GPS flags the need for the timely delivery of planned longer-term investment. And this is what we have been doing and what we will continue to do. There's no doubt this is a significant piece of work for Powerlink. And at this point, I want to acknowledge, I understand Paul Simshauser is here. I want to acknowledge Paul's contribution to Powerlink over the period of time. We all know Paul's an outstanding thought leader, and I thank Paul for his contribution and for Powerlink leading the modelling that's contained in the roadmap. But I want to thank Paul and his team, his outstanding team at Powerlink, for their efforts, and I wish you all the very best, Paul. We will certainly miss you. Moving to renewables. We all know Queensland has some of the highest quality wind and solar resources in the nation, if not the world. The roadmap sees renewables continuing to be built across our state to support demand growth in a responsible way, supported by landholders, local governments and regional communities. From around 1 gig of wind and 3.2 gig of large-scale solar generation fully operational right now, up to 6.8 gig of new wind and solar is anticipated to be operational by 2030 and a further 4.4 gig by 2035. The pace and scale of investment will be determined by market dynamics and the outcomes of community engagement. As part of the Investor Gateway, QIC will establish a coordinated exchange for developers, investors and GOCs to solicit interest in renewable energy projects and solutions required by the market. In an increasingly variable energy system, storage capacity is required to shift energy from when it is produced to when it is required and to manage demand peaks and troughs. The roadmap confirms the budget investment of $379 million in new utility-scale batteries at existing power station sites and $135 million to install network-scale batteries across the distribution network. I visited Energy Queensland Community Network batteries at Emerald, back up home at Torrington, and I'm always cognizant of Queenslanders' love of rooftop solar. 40% of Queensland roofs have rooftop solar. And I say roofs even though I know that's old English, and I had some debate in my office about whether it's roofs or not. I'm going with roofs. 40% of Queensland roofs have it, and this growth shows no signs of slowing. And I think Peter and Pat will be here from Energy Queensland, I know, and I thank them for their continuing efforts. And we're also shortly launching our Supercharged Solar for Renters scheme, which will lower power bills to for thousands of Queensland renters. I note, and notably, the top 3 postcodes for rooftop solar are in regional Queensland: McKay, Bundaberg and my hometown of Toowoomba. Energy Queensland will continue, obviously, with their investment into community network batteries, but there'll also be a new $10 million partnership fund to further incentivise private sector investment into those batteries too. As I alluded to earlier, today I announced the establishment of a new QIC Investor Gateway. This Investor Gateway, to be stood up by the end of the year, will lead future investigation and investment partnerships with the private sector on all prospective pumped hydro energy projects for the Queensland GOCs. And I acknowledge the contribution of CEO Kylie Ramper and her team as we partner with QIC to deliver this commitment. They've done an outstanding job. Smaller, more manageable pumped hydro is an integral signpost that will play a pivotal role in stabilising Queensland's power grid. It is uniquely capable of smoothing out variations in energy supply, ensuring consistent and reliable power for Queenslanders. We announced last month our $48 million investment supporting CleanCo's maintenance of Wivenhoe pumped hydro station's twin 285 meg turbines as part of our electricity maintenance guarantee. And I thank Tom and his outstanding team for the visit. It will ensure that this pioneering legendary Queensland asset supports our electricity network for decades to come. It's been a mainstay of Queensland's energy grid for the past 4 decades and provides a glimpse into our future with smaller, more manageable pumped hydro working alongside batteries to store energy in non-peak times for use when demand is high. In addition to the ongoing optionality analysis of Barumba, QIC will take responsibility of the Mount Rawdon, Big T and Capricornia projects on behalf of the state's interests, including project delivery optionality through to any potential final investment decision. The Investor Gateway will provide QIC with a clear mandate to match investor interest with energy GOC portfolio needs, including through project partnerships and contracting opportunities. Attract private sector capital to meet the new energy infrastructure and investment needs of the state and help grow the Queensland economy, and will help develop innovative approaches to maximise whole of state outcomes. This will ensure a consistent approach to the assessment of potential pumped hydro investments, applying a clear value framework which considers whole of government portfolio and system needs, while enabling CleanCo, Stanwell and CS Energy to focus on their core business. It's also about a clear role for private investment across Queensland's energy sector. Often in the last year, I observed how I wished Keith DeLacy, the founder of the government-owned corporation legislation in Queensland, was still with us to help with the GOC review. In now focusing our GOCs on core business, we have acted to reshape their direction. Although changes to boards and executives attract the most attention, particularly of our hosts here today, today's decisions, for example, the decision not to forward more than $1 billion in additional equity and grant funding for Stanwell's involvement in the CQH2 hydrogen project, help guide the GOCs towards delivering better outcomes for Queensland. For the Investor Gateway, I can also announce today that the Crisafulli government will create a new $400 million Queensland Energy Investment Fund for QIC to bring Queensland energy supply and firming projects from origination to operations, inviting collaboration with the private sector and government-owned corporations. It will progress the outcomes of the Central Queensland gas power tender, smaller pumped hydro investigations, and be an open door to all renewable investment proponents. A key component, and this is particularly, it's going to be, and I see some North Queenslanders, and if not North Queenslanders with North Queensland blood running through their veins. And it's an important announcement today for us with Copperstring, and I'm delighted to make it. Because in April, I revealed that the Copperstring project had increased from a cost of $1.8 billion to an estimated cost of $13.9 billion. We committed to saving it, and it is one of the most important signposts in our roadmap today. I recently drove the 1,000 kilometres from Townsville to Mount Isa. Apart from the privilege of travelling that vast landscape, what stayed with me most was the resilience, determination, and most tellingly, hope of the people of North Queensland and North West Queensland. I questioned my good mate Sean Dillon, the neighbouring member for Gregory, which itself covers 468,000 square kilometres of this great state. How do people survive the isolation and hardship? And Sean said to me simply, because we choose to. Well, our government chooses to back in the outback and communities in the northwest by delivering Copperstring, allocating a record $2.4 billion in the budget, and today announcing the next step in the planning and construction of this state-building project. From Townsville to Charters Towers, to Hewenden, to Richmond, to Julia Creek, to Cloncurry, to Mount Isa, all the way. To help save this project, we ask QIC to apply their infrastructure expertise to ensure the project was looked at through an infrastructure delivery and value for money lens, to drive investment into renewables and firming, and in turn provide energy reliability to communities and resources companies looking to invest in northwest Queensland. Today, we released the QIC Copperstring review. The review affirms the government's decision to commence work on the Eastern Link, first to connect Hughenden to Townsville to connect to the national electricity market sooner. The Eastern Link will be completed as previously planned by 2032, subject to federal approvals. QIC estimates the Eastern Link alone could unlock up to $10 billion in renewables investments. On-the-ground work is already underway at Hughenden, with further work in the pipeline pending federal approvals, and Powerlink's work camp is readying to welcome staff as development expands. QIC identified the proposed 500 kV specification, arbitrarily expanded by the former government, was not necessary until at least 2050, and that a rescoped 330 kV, together with spur lines and connection savings, could deliver cost reductions of $2.1 billion. Now, turning our attention to the Western Link, and the Northwest has made significant news again this week. That is the Western Link that runs from Hughenden to Mount Isa. The Northwest Minerals Province has 14 existing and up to 55 proposed mines. Demand from these mines, while still uncertain as now, could reach approximately 662 meg by 2040 in a high-growth scenario, with half of this projected increase in demand arising from potential greenfield mining projects. To underpin our government's support of the Western Link and the Northwest, I announced today a $200 million Northwest Energy Fund that will support local generation and storage solutions in partnership with the private sector, including to improve energy reliability from Hughenden to Richmond, Julia Creek, Cloncurry and Mount Isa. This fund, together with the local generation and storage solutions approach, will ensure financial decisions can be made by resources companies, knowing there is a reliable and affordable energy solution available before Copperstring is completed, bring forward lower energy prices in the Northwest faster than the previous Copperstring plan, promote more than $1 billion of private investment in battery storage and renewables in the Northwest, and increase competition across the region. QIC estimates this hybrid renewable microgrid model could achieve material power price savings in the Northwest. Starting now, QIC will work with existing generators, developers, investors and communities to open up the Northwest with affordable and reliable energy, paying forward the benefits of Copperstring to regional communities west of Hughenden to Mount Isa until the complete Western Link is built. Copperstring will also be supported by an increased $50 million community grant program for priority water and sewerage infrastructure in Hughenden, and I know Mayor Kate's in the audience today from Flinders, road maintenance and other council-led initiatives. Today, I announce that next week I will introduce the Energy Amendment Bill 2025 into the Parliament that will streamline and amend the former government's Energy, Renewable Transformation and Jobs Act 2024. It will pass before Christmas. As we promised, the bill will repeal renewable energy targets, confirm infrastructure investment frameworks, and streamline governance arrangements. Labor's renewable energy targets were always unachievable and were not the driving reason behind the private sector investment underway. We will retain the existing public ownership targets for transmission, distribution and deep storage classes of energy assets. We will replace the existing requirement to set a generation target of at least 54% public ownership with the target of maintaining 100% ownership of Queensland's existing publicly owned operating generation assets that are operational at the time the amendments commence. The bill will also replace renewable energy zones with regional energy hubs. It will be a legislated framework to coordinate new energy investment of all kinds in regions across regional Queensland. It will invite participation in new energy generation and storage, maintaining a balanced approach to ensure efficient investment and system outcomes. It will aid in addressing community concerns about transmission, crisscrossing regional Queensland to deliver sustainable social licence. Importantly, these coordinated hubs, based on private sector interest and development activity and aligned to community expectations, will support cost-efficient shared transmission connections for new energy generation to help put downward pressure on development costs. Development costs continue to escalate, and as the Clean Energy Council noted in August, no nationally proposed wind farm has reached a final investment decision this year. These amendments will support the planning changes completed by the Deputy Premier to provide certainty to proponents and protect community interests. And I can announce today that we will be investigating a regional energy hub near Hughenden in the Flinders Shire to help deliver the abundant renewables potential there now that Copperstring will be delivered. I mentioned Mayor Kate. She's the most passionate supporter of Copperstring renewables, and I can tell you from first-hand experience, her shire. The wind at Hughenden, as many of us know, blows at night, which makes it unique. And I look forward to working with her and the region to bring that hub to fruition. We know the energy shift can have a positive impact on regional communities, but only if it's done right. Mayors like Kate and Western Downs Andrew Smith, and I think Smithy might be here today, they lead the way in their regions with their advocacy, and I thank them for it. Queensland Treasury is also progressing our election commitment to deliver a code of conduct for renewable energy developers, with consultation to commence shortly. We will not be amending the Clean Economy Jobs Act of 2024. We will carefully consider the federal government's recent emissions reduction announcements and work with Queensland industry sectors to develop achievable and practical plans to reduce emissions and reach net zero by 2050. That work will be undertaken in consultation with stakeholders in the energy, resources, land and agriculture, transport, industry and built environment sectors during the roadmap. Friends, our roadmap deals with what is and how we can manage the challenges that lie ahead calmly and methodically. The roadmap has been informed by rigorous Treasury led by PowerLink modelling with QTC oversight as well. In the past 6 months, I've hosted 4 energy roundtables where I've deliberately brought together key stakeholders to help guide our roadmap. From renewables to gas to coal generation, sector leaders, investors, consumer groups and peak bodies. The representatives at the roundtables covered a broad spectrum of the energy sector. Treasury has hosted workshops and roundtables too. There have been hundreds of meetings and discussions between stakeholders in the industry. Treasury, my ministerial office, in addition to the informal stakeholder roundtables undertaken by the Productivity Commission with industry peak bodies and government-owned corporations as they prepared their advice to government, which I also release today. Put at its most straightforward, to meet the energy generation challenge of our future, we need more generation, coal for longer, more gas, more wind and solar, and more pumped hydro and batteries for firming and storage. I've pointed to these signposts consistently over the past year, and today they have been comprehensively hammered into the road, alongside the how, extending and investing into state-owned coal assets and considering future operations through a pragmatic decision matrix that triangulates system need with asset integrity and financial performance. Establishing the QIC Investor Gateway to attract private sector investment into new energy infrastructure, starting with a gas tender in central Queensland. Coordinating the assessment of smaller, more manageable pumped hydros to apply a clear value framework. Delivering strategic network investments like the Gladstone project and Copperstring, and outlining a clear and predictable role of government and GOCs to underpin investor and market confidence. Summer peak demand on the PowerLink network has grown 24% in a decade. Their models indicate that if the highest predictions eventuate, peak demand could reach 16 gig by 33-34. That's a near 50% increase in peak demand from now. On the flip side, our coal-generated based energy grid requires a base level of demand known as minimum system load. But with abundant solar energy entering the grid during daylight hours, that level of demand can come close to being unmet, particularly on mild weekends in spring and autumn when energy use is lowest. Put another way, in February, we had a record high daily demand of more than 11 gig, and yet just 6 weeks ago, we had a record low daily demand of less than 2.8 gig. There's no better example of how our energy system is changing and rapidly. Our roadmap strengthens that system and will be ready to respond to changing circumstances in the 5 years ahead. And there are obviously areas that will require consideration in the years ahead that time doesn't allow me to explore today, notwithstanding I've taken a lot of your time. Demand-side education, virtual power plants, tariffs, synchronous condensers, and the potential of biofuels through the Deputy Premier's Sovereign Capability Fund, which will invest into the biofuels industry. At my last roundtable, UQ Professor David Close noted there that in nearly all respects, he said, the hard work begins once the roadmap is released. And I completely agree. There is no more complex and conflicted policy debate in our country. And there is hard but necessary work ahead for all participants who engage in it. Because no matter your vantage point, there is certainly no more important task than delivering affordable, reliable and sustainable power for Queenslanders. And our roadmap today charts the start of that journey in a unique Queensland way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Treasurer. We appreciate it. That was a long speech.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. No, that's fine.
There we go, we're good.
We're good.
Let me just get a drink of water.
You all right? I'll ask a long question, so take your time. In many regards, this plan is business as usual for our state. As the world and Australia ambitiously pushes towards renewable energy, one word you didn't use in your speech was the word ambition. Is Queensland at risk of being left behind?
No. What I would say, Hayden, is that this was, and I referred to it a couple of times in my speech, right? So this is the Queensland approach. And I'm reminded a couple of weeks ago, I was at News Corp, or the Australians' Energy Nation Forum in Sydney. And I was struck by South Australian Premier Peter Malinauskas went first. And he was talking about, so the South Australian grid is unique, it's renewables supported by gas for firming and generation, but predominantly for firming the renewables grid. And then I was on the panel next, and then the New South Wales Premier spoke, and again about gas. And what I heard that day, firstly, that there is, I believe, a fundamental shift that's happening across the country at a state level, in any event, that gas is being talked about more than what had been done previously. And we know that that is necessary. So it was interesting to hear the South Australian perspective, the New South Wales perspective, and obviously the Queensland perspective. Now, let's not forget that New South Wales generation is more than 60% coal generation like Queensland's, right? But our unique position is that our coal generators are younger. We have a younger fleet, and that is why the resetting of those operating timeframes today is an important announcement. But directly to your question, no. We've gone about this the uniquely Queensland way, and my task is to make sure that we have this plan that delivers lower system costs, which avoids that additional cost of $1,035 to Queensland households every year for the next decade. And we deliver that lower cost system and that avoided cost for households. That's the Queensland way.
I want to jump straight to the media table because it's chock-a-block and they're ready to go.
Where are they? Sorry.
Here, Treasurer. Hi, Marlina Whop from
Marlina.
7 News. Treasurer, good afternoon. The federal government has relied on advice from CSIRO modelling as part of its energy plan. What economic and scientific modelling was undertaken to inform and shape your plan?
So, Marlina, are you talking about the Chris Bowen plan on emissions or an energy system plan like ours? Sorry.
What economic and scientific modelling was undertaken to inform or shape your plan?
Yep. So, as I said, PowerLink led the modelling, and Treasury modelling has underpinned this, and it's also had oversight from QTC. So, we've been very cautious and conservative in the assumptions, and all the assumptions and sensitivities are laid out in the modelling, which is important. It's contained in the Energy Roadmap. We've been very conservative in those assumptions and sensitivities. They're laid out in the roadmap, and it's an important differential to make to the former government, whose former energy and jobs plan ultimately fell apart once those 2 pumped hydro projects, the 5 gig at Pioneer Burdekin and the 2 gig at Barumba, and those cost blowouts, when they went from 7 to 12 to 36.8 billion. And let's not forget that Pioneer Burdekin project of the former government, that was more than double the size of Snowy Hydro 2.0. And Barumba, that project blowout went from 14 to 18. So we've been cautious and conservative in the modelling. It's been led by PowerLink with Treasury modelling, and QTC has had oversight of it as well. So we've been very diligent in it, and it's contained in the roadmap.
Hello, Treasurer Jack McKay from the ABC. Is this government committed to the interim emissions reduction target of 75% by 2035? And if so, how are you going to achieve that with this plan?
So thank you for the question, Jack. So I have just said we're not amending the Clean Energy Jobs Act, and we've said that all along, and we've committed to net zero before the election, and that is our commitment. And there's, again, I would draw on other jurisdictions as well when it comes to emissions reductions, in that, we've got other jurisdictions. South Australia doesn't have a 35 target. It talks about an emissions target for 35 being developed by 2030. Western Australia doesn't have emissions targets at all. So what we've delivered today is an energy plan, but I'm making it clear we're sticking to net zero by 2050. That is...
And in the interim target, can you rule out repealing the interim target?
Well, we're not making any changes to that act. What we're doing is going through the sector plans from here. Chris Bowen has taken the best part of 2 terms to get their emissions targets. There's a lot of work to do from here on emissions. And I said we would do that work during the course of the roadmap. We've got sector plans with all the various industry, built environment, transport, energy, agriculture. We've got to develop those sector plans, and that work will start. We've also got the safeguard mechanism being reviewed by the federal government during 26 and 27. We've got to digest the federal emissions work undertaken by Chris Bowen, which I wasn't consulted on, so we'll go and do that work throughout the course of the roadmap. And that's an important piece of work that we'll do on emissions, but we're committed to net zero by 2050, and there's no changes to that act.
G'day, Treasurer Harry Clark from Sky News. My question is, how can the Queensland Government afford $300 million to prop up a Swiss mining company, but not afford to bring down coal taxes, which were brought in by your opponents in the former Labor government, especially when you've just made clear that you're quite happy to reverse what you think are bad Labor policies?
Bit to unpack there, Harry. Okay, first things first. Coal royalties, we've made our position clear. But what we've also said is the significance of the coal industry to our state. And I want to say today, the certainty we've given by resetting the operational technical lifespan of those coal generators is a significant moment for regional Queensland. That is thousands of jobs across regional Queensland that have been saved today, And by extending those technical lifespans of those coal-fired generators, coupled with the decision matrix, as I mentioned, that's a significant moment, I believe, for regional Queensland. So that's a key message from today. With respect to the first part of your question, we've said all along, and today, I don't think I could be any clearer on what I think about the potential for the Northwest. There are estimates that there is $500 billion worth of critical minerals in the Northwest. And we know there's going to be a worldwide copper shortage. We know that there are copper reserves in the Northwest, people out there interested, wanting to get involved. Important economic development. We know that there were those 17,000 jobs connected to the smelter. So we're going to make sure Glencore are held accountable to that arrangement, and we're going to make sure that the work is done to support the Northwest. So obviously, I was talking to Peter McKay, the Mayor at Mount Isa, last night, and obviously it's been welcomed in Mount Isa, the Glencore announcement, but we've got to keep the momentum moving, and that Northwest is rich with critical minerals. That's why the $200 million Northwest Energy Fund that I've announced today is significant, because we want to create those targeted energy solutions for those remote communities to support more mining activity, because there is significant wealth there for all of Queensland.
Treasurer, can I just when in your speech you talked about the government working with GOCs to monitor the condition of state-owned coal units and apply the framework rigorously when considering their operating future. Does that mean if you have like a dog of a generator, one that keeps exploding, for example, you could close it earlier than the technical lifespan?
I did actually check the live outage finder before I jumped up, Hayden, just to be sure. No unexpected outages today. So I'm going to let the experts do their job, right? So that analysis, we've announced the resetting of those operational timeframes, and that decision matrix will be rigorously applied. It will be rigorously applied, and those discussions will be held between Treasury and the government-owned corporations because, their assets that they manage on behalf of the Queensland people, they'll have those discussions. We've laid out in the roadmap today those operating timelines. Those discussions will take place. We've said coal will be in the system for decades, which we believe appropriate, because ultimately, we need to utilise and improve what we have while we build what we need for the future. That is ultimately the task, and that's what we're doing.
So if the experts do come back and say this should close early, you'll have no hesitation in enforcing that advice?
Well, I'll leave that to the decision matrix and the application of it. You're not going to get me on a hypothetical, Hayden, but I'll let the experts do their analysis, and what we know for sure is when that decision matrix is applied, the most important component of that matrix is system need, and that is the best way we can ensure affordable, reliable and sustainable power for Queenslanders while what is needed for the future is built.
Hi Treasurer, Andrew from The Guardian. Just a point of clarification first. When you say you won't repeal those 2035 emissions targets, do you mean like not now, not ever, while you're the Energy Minister of the state, or does that mean just next week?
No, Andrew, there's no plans to amend that Act, and we've got a lot of work to do on the sector plans. Like I said, it took the federal Labor government a lot of time, well into their second term, to finalise their emissions targets. We've got that work. We've got the safeguard mechanism review in 26-27. We've got the sector plan work to get underway. We're going to go and do that. And part of it... Sorry, you go, mate.
Essentially, you're saying in 10 years' time, there will be 75% less emissions than we make now. How can you say that when you're also saying we're going to repeal the renewable energy target when obviously power is our biggest source of carbon emissions in the state?
Well, a couple of things I'd add to that, Andrew, on emissions, right? So we've already overshot our 2030 targets. So Queensland's overshot its 2030 targets for emissions reduction. So that first thing. What has to be done now is that work, the sector plan work. There's an awful lot of things to be undertaken with that. We've got the safeguard mechanism, we've got the Chris Bowen analysis and those emissions targets that we've got to work through. And, you know, the investment certainty, and this is one of the things, right? So sometimes it feels like a lot being Energy Minister and Treasurer, but one of the great things about being Treasurer with this hat on is the message we can send to investors. So when I put my Treasurer's hat on and say, look, we're committed to net zero by 2050, that sends an investment certain signal. It's a certainty signal for investors. So we're going to go away and do that work. Like I've said, South Australia said they're going to announce their 35 midpoint in 2030. So we're going to go and do the work that's necessary, do it the Queensland way, and as it stands, we will not be amending that bill. Act.
Thanks, Treasurer. Reece Dalessandro from 9 News. Treasurer, you've just claimed a $1,035 annual household saving, but really that seems to be a reduction in system investment costs and not a direct reduction in expected electricity costs. Speaking honestly, will actual household power bills come down under your plan? And if so, by how much?
Thanks, Reece, for the question. Look, no one's making that commitment, and I include the Prime Minister and other state leaders. But what I will say is that under our energy roadmap, power bills will be cheaper under us than what they would have otherwise been under Labor. Now, that is what that number today highlights, that households will avoid $1,035 per annum every year for 10 years than what they would have otherwise experienced. So that's a clear message from today, and that analysis is clear from across the tables in the roadmap. And you know, over time, like the importance of today is this is a credible plan. And I've been really determined that it is delivered on pragmatism and finding the balance. And I believe we've found that balance. We've reduced system costs. And as I said, you know, we've lifted the rebate for vulnerable households from $372 to $386. That's 600,000 households around Queensland in the budget. And I look forward to continuing work to make sure we're putting every bit of downward pressure on power prices as possible.
Giles Parkingson from Renew Economy. There was your roadmap outlined 6.5 gigawatts of new wind and solar by 2030, but 1.5 gigawatts is already being built. Rio Tinto has already committed to 3 gigawatts to replace the Gladstone coal-fired power station, and the capacity investment scheme awarded underwriting agreements to 2 gigawatts. That makes up that capacity. Are you basically assuming that nothing else will be built out to 2030? I mean, is that a signal for more wind and solar? Because it doesn't sound like it. And the second question is just a clarification on the western part of the Copperstring link. What sort of timeframes are you talking about there, both for the line and for the proposed microgrids?
Great, thank you. Second question first. So the Northwest Energy Fund will be expedited by QIC. So work on the western limb of Copperstring begins now. We wanted to fast track and pay forward the benefits of Copperstring to the western limb. So those discrete energy solutions, QIC will be in the field. I think Kylie's here in front of me. I think there could even be correspondence this afternoon. going out, and the mayors that are here, I know Kate's here from Flinders, we want to send a clear message that Copperstring is coming from Townsville to Mount Isa, but we want to pay forward the benefits for Copperstring for the Northwest now, and we want it to start now. So that's why those discrete energy solutions are so important, and I look forward to QIC getting them moving, and they've already done an amazing job engaging with proponents. And as I said, you've got $500 billion worth of critical minerals in the Northwest. That's an opportunity. That's a real opportunity that I want to make sure that Queensland seizes. In respect to the first question, we are setting today that framework. So the QIC Investor Gateway, it's going to match investor interest with energy GOC requirements. It's going to attract private capital to help build the new investment that we need into energy infrastructure. And we're going to develop, that gateway will develop innovative solutions with a whole of state approach. For me, the big announcement from today is QIC taking a whole of state approach. And it's not going to be GOCs and everybody working separately. It's going to be a unified system, and that'll be an open door to all renewables investors, the pumped hydro optionality assessment, all the way through to development. And of course, that gas peaker market sounding that'll start by the end of the year. It's all important work. With respect to wind and solar, so I want to send a clear message that we welcome renewables, and I can't be any clearer with respect to Copperstring. So that eastern limb, Hughenden to Townsville, that could unlock $10 billion worth of renewables investment. $10 billion worth of, and I mentioned in the speech that wind at Hughenden, it is unique because it does blow at night. And we want to capture that wind. We've got these amazing resources there. Now, the other note I would say is right now, Queensland has 4.7 gig of large-scale solar and wind under construction or financially committed. That is more than 1 gig more than any other jurisdiction in the country. So that highlights Queensland's strength in renewables. We are outshining other jurisdictions for renewables investment. And when we get that balance right with the community expectations and the planning right, I look forward to welcoming a lot more renewables investment in the future.
Good afternoon, Treasurer. Andrew Stafford from IAP here. You praised the resilience of North Queenslanders and North West Queenslanders. You didn't mention the word climate in your speech. The recent National Climate Risk Assessment showed that Queensland and North Queenslanders in particular were especially vulnerable to humanitarian, environmental and insurance impacts in the coming decades. Is the state government simply dismissing those risks with its pledge to keep burning coal for decades to come? And how does that square with the state government's ongoing commitment to net zero under the Paris Agreement?
Thank you for the question. My task was to find the balance, find the middle road on this energy roadmap. And emissions reduction is important. And electricity makes up about 36% of all emissions. And as I've said, we've overshot our 2030 emissions target. We're at 34%. And I want to continue to see emissions reductions because it's important. And we've been consistent. But the balance we have to find in this system plan is affordability, reliability with sustainability. And we've got the balance. We've found the pragmatic, and we are dealing with the reality of our energy system. And I look forward to engaging fully with all industries as we work on these sector plans during the roadmap, because there are many opportunities for emissions reductions, and I'm looking forward to the sector plan. I saw Joe Shepherd over here, my friend, the CEO of Queensland Farmers Federation. I know Joe often talks about farmers have done their fair share, and I come from the land, and I know how farmers are the greatest custodians of the land which they are fortunate to own, and it's important that we, as we go through these sector plans, that they're taken seriously, and I'm going to work through that in a very considered way.
I think we've got time for one more.
Treasurer Sarah Elks from the Australian newspaper. You referred a number of times to Chris Bowen's emission reduction targets, also a little snip there that he didn't contact you before he announced them. Those targets are based, or they're predicated on Queensland shutting down coal-fired power by 2035. You've announced today that that won't happen, probably in the energy mix until 2046. So does Queensland's plan effectively doom the federal emissions reduction targets?
Thanks, Sarah. So there'd be a couple of things I would say to that. Firstly, we said before the election coal would go for longer. I said in April that I would be examining and asking Treasury to work with GOCs to work on the technical lifespans of our coal generators. The technical lifespan of our generators that I've confirmed today in the Energy Roadmap were publicly available. AEMO has had them since at least 2019. So there is no surprise when I said in April that Treasury and GOCs would consider a technical lifespan, do some work to work on the technical lifespan. Well, these technical lifespans were what was reported to AEMO in 2019. So there's no surprise for the federal government. That's been on AEMO website. So and when I said in April that we would do that work, it was important work, and I thank the GOCs for their work with Treasury in confirming it. So in respect of that, there was no surprise. It's been publicly available information. In respect of the other, look, every other jurisdiction is going their own way, and I referred to it a couple of times already on emissions. You know, South Australia don't have a midpoint. Western Australia don't have emissions targets at all. So our decision today is getting that balance. You know, we know a third of emissions are down to electricity. We're going to work on the sector plans. But with respect to those emissions, in respect to your question, there would have been no surprise for the federal government given everything we'd been saying for the last 12 months.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking the Treasurer and Energy Minister.